and welcome to National Focus. I am Shakira Peer. In the headlines, Minister for Foreign Affairs, International Business and Diaspora Relations, Honorable Dr. Kenneth Daru, addressed the United Nations General Assembly on September 29. Dominica now has 31 confirmed COVID-19 cases and 5 young men have been elected to serve on the Bagatelle Village Council. Details of the headline stories and more when we return.
The hurricane season is less than a month away. Find out today what types of hazards that could happen where you live. Hurricanes can cause many hazards, including flooding due to heavy rainfall, large waves along the coast, strong winds, landslides, and falling rocks. Determine your risk and be prepared for any eventuality. A message from the Government Information Service.
Welcome back. Minister for Foreign Affairs, International Business and Diaspora Relations, Honorable Dr. Kenneth Daru addressed the 75th anniversary of the United Nations General Assembly. A one-day level meeting was held to mark the 75th anniversary, and this meeting was held under the theme, "The Future We Want, the UN We Need," reaffirming our collective commitment to multilateralism. Minister Daru says the United Nations must pursue an economic construct which responds to community and to conscience. He says the United Nations must ensure that the appropriate response addresses the inconsistencies of every nation at all levels and must not be seen to favor the more developed and powerful nations.
This response must not only make for a greener planet and cleaner oceans, but must also provide hope for a growing, diverse generation destined to congregate at all levels across the globe to dialogue on issues of mutual importance in the interests of this generation and future ones.
Minister Daru says that this meeting is a historic one due to the impact of COVID-19 as it continues to redefine the existence of humans and test the resilience of all.
It has reshaped how organizations such as this united body continues to function and how all countries do business. The reality is that small island developing states like Dominica already face several inherent challenges, and the added consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic have further exacerbated these difficulties, including the limitation of funds to protect the health and well-being of our citizens.
Minister Daru says the government of Dominica remains committed to ensuring the safety of all citizens.
The government remains committed to ensuring that all citizens who are infected are properly treated and cared for, while at the same time continuing to deliver regular services to all citizens. Students have returned to the schools and businesses are operating once more in their new normal.
Minister Daru called on the UN General Assembly as leaders of their respective governments to provide guidance and hope to their population.
This is a greater challenge for small states like Dominica that must simultaneously battle the effects of climate change, other external shocks, and our inability to access concessionary financing to build the necessary resilience to natural and economic shocks that are way beyond our control. Mr. President, fellow delegates, the government of the Commonwealth of Dominica will continue to use platforms such as this United Nations General Assembly debate to highlight the inequality and inadequacy which continues to permeate our generation. And to this end, we'll call on this United Nations to assist small states like ours in unlocking funds that have been made available to small island developing states to fight climate change and to build resilience.
Residents of Campbell will be relocated to Warner in 2021, says Minister for National Security and Home Affairs and Member of Parliament for the Maho constituency, Honorable Rayburn Blackmore. Campbell has been deemed one of the most vulnerable communities in Dominica as it is prone to landslides and floods. Following the devastation of Tropical Storm Erica, the village was left even more exposed and vulnerable to any natural disaster. It was also determined that there was very little action that could be taken in the village to mitigate against further erosion of land. Since then, the government has decided to relocate the residents in phases, targeting the 25 most vulnerable families first.
But never forget, in 2007, the Prime Minister came to a town hall meeting and advised on your relocation. I want to say to you, starting next year, we're going to have a systematic and incremental relocation of the people of Campbell to the best site in Dominica, and Warner Heights. But it has to be done properly, starting with the first 25 most vulnerable families.
National epidemiologist Dr. Sholadin Ahmed has reported that Dominica now has 31 confirmed cases of COVID-19, but there is no community spread. Since the reopening of the borders, a total of 13 cases were identified, and they are between the ages of 2 years and 59 years old.
Most of these cases, 10 out of 13 of them, are imported ones and have been placed at the quarantine facility on arrival. Only 3 out of 87 contacts that were traced tested positive for COVID-19. This means that 96% of the contacts were PCR negative. Currently, 7 out of 13 are at the COVID facility undergoing isolation phase, and the rest of them have fully recovered. So far, the transmission of COVID remains sporadic and is due to importation of cases. There is no evidence of community transmission.
Dr. Ahmed gave some key points for pre-arrival screening being done at the ports of entry.
All travelers coming to stay meaning including overnight stay in Dominica, are required to complete the online health questionnaire. All travelers, except individuals from the CARICOM bubble, are required to obtain a negative PCR results of a swab taken within 72 hours from the arrival date. All email notifications are sent out by 6 a.m. on the arrival day at the latest. Additionally, a master list with all approved travelers for the day are sent out to the team on the ground between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. Hence, we encourage you all to complete your online questionnaire no later than 7 a.m. on your arrival day.
Speaker of the House of Assembly, Honorable Joseph Isaac, is of the view that more should be done to keep the public aware of the happenings of the House. The House Speaker was speaking at the end of a three-day post-election seminar hosted by the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. Honorable Isaac says that one idea coming from the seminar is to develop a closer relationship with media houses around the island.
One of the things that I will be looking into is really how we can work, for example, with the media. We look at one website, also the media use GIS, DBS, the different radio stations to really reach out to the general public so people can be acquainted with what is really happening in the House, the rules, and what are the decisions, where certain parliamentarians stand on certain matters, also the issue of attendance in terms of all matters that would redound to the benefit of the public. I think the public need to be aware. It's not just vote a person and then they go to the House and you don't know what they're doing on your behalf.
Honorable Isaac says parliamentarians should compare their performance to that of regional and international parliamentarians. He says that this could assist the public in knowing how well they are being represented in the House of Assembly.
Where, for example, how do we benchmark ourselves versus regional parliamentarians? How do we benchmark ourselves versus members of Commonwealth, for example, in the UK? How are they performing relative to how we are performing as parliamentarians? In the US, when we listen to congressmen and senators, how they performing? How are we doing that relative to them? Are we on par with them in regards to attendance, in regards to voting on certain bills? And are people aware as to what our position is in terms of voting on certain bills and why are we voting and how we voted? So these are some of the things I think with a small island state, if we can work together, and that's what I really wish could happen, where, as I said earlier, the camaraderie is so close and really good that we can actually work together for the development of Dominica. At the end of the day, it is really for the people we are here in this parliament.
The local government department and the Office of Disaster Management have received over 2.1 million EC dollars for the retrofitting and supply of equipment for shelters around the island. Local Government Commissioner Glenroy Tousse says the grant was secured from the USAID as phase 2 of a community shelter emergency project which was established post-Hurricane Maria.
Along with the IOM, we saw the need to look at a second phase of that project. And that second phase would have looked at the improvement of or the retrofitting of 7 emergency shelters and providing supplies to 55 emergency shelters in Dominica. And so we are pleased that sometime earlier this year, the funding was approved by USAID OFDA. And for those of you who don't know what USAID OFDA means, it's United States Agency for International Development through the Office of Foreign Disaster Assistance. That's OFDA. And so we were able to approve an amount of 800,000 US, which is equivalent to approximately 2.1 million EC dollars for the execution of a community shelter emergency preparedness project, which will seek, as I said, to enhance our shelter capacity and, of course, to make it the model that we so desire in our community.
Mr. Tousse says 7 shelters will be renovated as part of the project. The scope of the project will include the installation of kitchens, the reinforcement of roofs, and the enhancement of washroom facilities, which would bring the shelters up to the desired standards.
We have 7 of those shelters that we have to improve or retrofit. The Cottage Community Center, the Lower Penville Resource Center, the Cochrane Old School, the Point Michel Community Center, the Eggleston Pavilion, the Sinico Resource Center, the Loda Old School, and of course, I think I did mention the Lower Penville Resource Center. So these are the 5. Out of those 7 projects, the one with the greatest work is the Sinico Resource Center. And so extensive work will be done. But all of those resource centers, all of those emergency shelters we're talking about, basically the works that are going to be done is improvement to it's not breaking down and building back. It's basically enhancing, retrofitting. So we may have to improve on the roof structure. We may have to change all doors and windows, the toilet facilities and kitchenettes and all of those things.
Mr. Tousse says the Sinico Resource Center is a major project and works are set to commence in November 2020 to end early in 2021. He also says the shelters will be ready come the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season.
As I said, the major one will be at the Sinico Resource Center. And so we are hoping to commence work actually in November with a possible completion very early in 2021. So essentially those 7 emergency shelters will be in a better state of readiness come the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season. And it's essentially that's what we're looking at.
Mr. Tousse says 55 shelters will receive equipment in the form of generators, hygiene supplies, first aid kits, kitchen sets, and most importantly, privacy screens. Mr. Tousse says that given the COVID-19 pandemic, the privacy screens are essential.
Additional to that, as part of the project, we are going to provide supplies to 55 emergency shelters. And the supplies we're talking of is things like bed cots, kitchen hygiene sets. We're talking of alternative sources of energy, maybe solar, but more maybe generator. We're talking of blankets, first aid kits, kitchen supplies. We're talking of separations. There's a screen that we use, basically, that we can separate families, and we are in the COVID thing, and based on scientific information is that COVID may be here with us for a little while. And so that will help us in terms of screening, not necessarily screening, providing a screen so that we can at least separate families and that sort of thing. And importantly, providing some hygiene supplies as well.
You're watching National Focus. More when we return. Welcome back. 5 young men from the communities of Bagatelle, Fort Saint-Jean and Point Caribe have been elected to serve on the village council. The elections were held on September 28, 2020. Alia Martin reports. 5 young men from the communities of Bagatelle, Fort Saint-Jean and Point Caribe have been elected to serve on the village council. The elections were held on September 28, 2020. Vincent Gregoire and Wilson Kazimi topped the polls with 89 votes each. Dawson Defoe received 80 votes, while Griffin Defoe and Gary Cabon obtained 76 votes each. The other candidates were Nelia Fountain, Chad Beek, Niford Charles, Sheena Ansem, Marcus Thomas, Davian Francis, Era Blaise, Kellon Francis, Sibyl Gist, Baptiste Baron, and Richardson Carrett. 215 or 28.7% of the electorate voted, with 118 being male and 97 being female. The newly elected candidates are ready to serve their people.
I feel satisfied, I'm excited. I would like to say thank you first of all to the Most High, whom I give appreciation for giving me the strength or the courage to go up to represent my people. I'd like to say thank you also to the people who came out to vote today. It was a good turnout, and I hope to have a positive impact on the community, that is exactly what I set out to do. I must say my counterpart, or my, not competitor, but we decided to work together, so I'd like to say congratulations to all the others, the top 5, and I look forward to working with each and every one of them.
Youth at work for the youth and the elderly. And I'm looking forward to working with the other persons on the council to bring a lot of changes that the populace in the community have been asking for. So I think the vote turnout was good, and the people have spoken, and they have invested in the youth, because we are the future, and those after us are also the future. So we are going to work hard and ensure that we bring to the community what the community needs, what it deserves.
Well, I'm actually quite excited and elated. Some of the names I thought were gonna turn out much better, I wasn't expecting. But it's somewhat of a surprise also. But from my perspective, I'm quite happy with the people who turned out and with the number of people who turned out to vote, and that's pretty good.
Well, I'm excited with the results, in particular the turnout. That was astonishing. We encouraged all folks to come out and show their support and show that they're willing to see a new career so we can start a new work, because we need change. So I'm excited to get to work.
Village council elections are held every 3 years in Dominica, and the council is formed with 8 members, 5 of which are elected members, and 3 members are nominated by the government. The government will nominate 3 people to serve on the council, and after this process, a chairperson will be chosen. The Bagatelle, Fort Saint-Jean and Point Caribe Village Council was first inaugurated in 1971. Alia Martin for the Government Information Service. New president of the Dominica Association of Industry and Commerce, Mr. Stephen Lander, says the association will continue to increase direct value to its membership with the continuation of training sessions and seminars to build their capacity. Mr. Lander was elected chamber president in August 2020.
What we want to continue doing, which has been a focus for us over the last couple of years actually, would be increasing direct value to membership. And the way that we've done that is by exposing members to opportunities and information and tools that they can immediately implement at their business level. Take, for example, we've been able to expose membership to networking opportunities where they've traveled, met with counterparts in similar industries in other countries, etc., and established relationships that they've been able to leverage to increase their business. We also focus on a lot of workshops and trainings. Coming out of Maria, for example, we focused on risk management, business continuity. You will continue to see a lot of that sort of activity.
Mr. Lander says that as part of building the capacity for its members, the association will be hosting an entrepreneurship hub workshop in October for young entrepreneurs.
we have what we call an entrepreneurship hub workshop, which will be hosting over a period of a week for young entrepreneurs between the ages of 20 and 35. And in that workshop, we will be bringing a number of experts to speak and engage in activities with the young entrepreneurs. And it's all about sharpening their business skills. So we'll be talking about finance, we'll be talking about legal issues, we're talking about company structuring, accounting, operations, all of those things that are not necessarily taught to entrepreneurs when they start up. We're going to be giving them the opportunity to learn about those things and how they impact their business success as they go about, pursuing their entrepreneurial interests.
Mr. Lander says a focus of the association is on digitization, as this is the direction that the regional and international community is heading. Mr. Lander also stated that the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic brought the need for digitization into sharp focus.
Another strong point that we need to focus on is digitization, right? That is the way that the world is headed. There's no two ways about it. And I think COVID brought that into sharper focus. Those persons who were in a position to adapt very quickly and change the mode of delivery of their services or products were in a better position to survive the challenges that were faced. But from a broader perspective, the world is moving in that direction. We're changing how we transact, we're changing how we exchange, and Dominican businesses need to be ready for that. And a continued point of focus again for us will be risk management and business continuity, particularly with the natural disasters and so on that we're facing.
Mr. Lander says the DIC represents all interests of all enterprises in Dominica, and that having an increased membership gives an opportunity to better advocate for and on behalf of the private sector.
There is strength in numbers, and the more that we can learn from members, the more feedback they can provide, the more informed we are about the advocacy that we take up with other stakeholders in the game. So having the broader membership is certainly an asset. What has driven that is our focus on delivering direct value. I think we've broadened our focus to be more inclusive in terms of small and medium enterprises. Traditionally, for whatever reason, the Chamber has been seen as a sort of big business organization, and it really ought not to be so. We represent all interests of all enterprises in Dominica.
The government of Dominica, through the Ministry of Environment, Rural Modernization and Kalinago Upliftment, is constructing a Met office in Jimit, and this is all aimed at building resilience in Dominica. This project is being implemented under the Disaster Vulnerability Reduction Project, DVRP. Project coordinator for the DVRP, Mr. Colin Gist, says the project is going smoothly and completion is targeted for November.
There is the ongoing project. There's the construction of the Met Office adjacent to the ODM, that's in Jimit. The building, it's 75% completed. We expect final completion around, I think, the 27th of November. So this is one of the projects that's ongoing.
Another major project which will be undertaken through the DVRP is the installation of the seismic network in Dominica. Mr. Gill says most of the important instruments have been procured.
Once the seismic personnel from the UE Seismic Research Center are available, they will be in Dominica to commence the installation of this network.
He gave some of the benefits of the network to Dominica.
The network is going to enhance Dominica's readiness and on a timely basis to monitor seismic activities in Dominica. So we don't, although we will have to call on the Seismic Research Center in Trinidad, but the equipment will be placed in strategic locations in Dominica to really get a proper reading of what's happening, the seismic activities that's occurring in Dominica. And this network will be, it will be linked to that of Guadeloupe and Martinique. So there will be some level of uniformity and coordination between Dominica, Guadeloupe and Martinique when this network has been established.
The Pesticides Control Board of the Ministry of Blue and Green Economy, Agriculture and National Food Security is observing Pesticides Awareness Week from September 27 to October 3, 2020. Pesticides Awareness Week 2020 is being observed regionally under the theme PPE for COVID-19, PPE for pesticides use, health and safety for all. Lead Pesticides Inspector Mr. Joseph Blandford listed some of the week's activities.
This activity is an activity that is undertaken throughout the Caribbean. We have a coordinated group of pesticide control board which put together the week of activity every year, and that is celebrated or commemorated in each participating state. It starts off with a church service or a message to the churches, not a church service, a message to the churches, which is done by the Director of Agriculture. The Honorable Minister of Agriculture does the address to the nation for the week. And then you have the other radio messages that are sent to the various media houses where we bring across the messages to the general public.
Due to the social distancing protocols put in place, some of the normal activities scheduled during Pesticides Awareness Week have been cancelled. However, visits will be made to primary and secondary schools to sensitize students on pesticides management and safety. Mr. Blandford says this year's theme was chosen to remind citizens about the importance of personal protective equipment, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic.
The theme this year is PPE for COVID-19 and use in pesticide application, safety for all. Now that is to remind the nation that, as we said, we are not living in a normal situation. We have COVID-19, which is an unfortunate situation that is upon us, but it necessitates that we have to have the necessary protective gear to protect ourselves and other members of the public. Also, farmers are still engaged in the application of pesticides, so PPE is very important. We also have various establishments that engage in preparation of food and provide other services to the general public. And also, the use of PPE there is very, very important. As I said, COVID-19 changes everything. So this year it's a little bit different because of the challenges that we face with COVID-19.
Mr. Blandford reminded farmers and other citizens to follow the necessary protocols when using pesticides of any kind.
We just want to remind them, because of the challenges of COVID-19, it is important that we adhere to the regulation that is put forward by the Ministry of Health as it relates to the use of that particular PPE when we interact with the public or we go into public space. Also, engage in our normal farming activities, we would also want to remind them that the use of personal protective equipment is necessary to provide the necessary protection to them against the use of those pesticides. Pesticides are dangerous, and we have to treat them as such. Your health is your responsibility. Somebody can take on that responsibility for you. If you are engaged in the use of pesticide, you have to ensure that you follow the necessary steps, procedures, and precautions as is outlined for the use of those particular pesticides.
And now your weather update. Unstable conditions are expected to generate a few showers and isolated thunderstorm activity across the island. By tonight into Thursday, a tropical wave is projected to generate an increase in cloudiness with showers and thunderstorm activity across Dominica. As a result of this approaching tropical wave, a flood watch or warning may be required. People in areas prone to flooding, landslides, and falling rocks should exercise caution throughout the rest of the week as the area is projected to remain moist and unstable. Moderate seas are expected during the next 24 hours with waves heights peaking near 8 feet. A small craft advisory is in effect for above normal seas. Small craft operators and sea bathers, particularly on the East Coast, are advised to exercise caution. And that's all for this edition of National Focus. Be sure to follow GIS Dominica on Facebook, YouTube, as well as on Twitter. You can also drop us an email at gis@dominica.gov.dm. From all of us here in the GIS News Production team, I am Shakira Pear. Thanks for watching.